Hello, everybody. So this is your 5-minute warning. The silent auction and the grand prize draw will end in 5 minutes. And the clock is starting to count. Put those bids in. Get your photo taken. No more pizza. Hello. Okay, everybody. This is your 2-minute warning before we ask you to put your pens down. We have a couple of items that still have no bids. Oh, it has gone off. There's some beautiful artwork that still has no bids. So there's a VI fitness pass. You can actually spend a year getting fit for very, very little. Bid on that, please. There's a blanket, a beautiful necklace, some artwork, and a lovely Global Village wall hanging. So some items that you will get for a song. And we're now at 90 seconds before we close the bell, or ring the bell, perhaps. Anybody have a bell? Okay, and counting. "60 seconds. If you want to check on whether you have won that item, you have a minute to get up there and make your bid. Not quite. Yes, please. Okay, by the time I have finished reading this list of volunteers who help Open Cinema every month and for years on end, by the time I have read the list of volunteers, we will actually be closing the silent auction. So I would like to say a big thank you to the following folks who help Open Cinema happen. Joseph Krancevic, and there he is. Holly Pattison, where is she? There she is at the back. Eleanor Calder and Alan McLash, thank you so much for your help delivering things and making coffee and being generally great folks. Robert and Susan Thompson, the face of Open Cinema at our box office, thank you so much. Jan Dong, Rita Fromholtz, Richard Kriegler is taking photographs tonight. Kaylin Schick. That's right. Sorry, that didn't come out quite right, but Kaylin Schick, Linda Rohr Marshall. I'm almost at the end of this list of volunteers, so are you getting your bids in? Joanne Cook, Megan Cuthbert, Nancy Morgan, Jenny Hildebrand, and Carolyn Emo. Thank you to those folks who help Open Cinema month after month after month.
Do you have a float in mind for the silent auction, or should we make something out of the pizza float?
It would be good to give them the float.
Give them all of it?
Yes, but if you could know a little bit about what that is.
We
Yes, please. So also some thank you. So I think we're time. Okay, the silent auction is closing in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Closed. Pins down. Silent auction is over. So now we're going to pull the grand prize draw in a moment. But I'm going to sort of corral people over to the front of the room. Or is it the back? Are we the front or the back? People are being very unruly back there. You're having too much of a good time. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is I'm just going to thank a few folks, and then we're going to pull the grand prize draw. Did you get your grand prize ticket for a night at Accent Inns? Yes? No? I'm going to ask for your attention, please. I would like your attention, please. I know it's too much fun, and I feel rather sort of mean, but I'm going to thank some more people. So I want to thank my PowerBar Tweet Chat team who are at the back and who have helped to develop Open Cinema's community engagement beyond the room over the last 2 seasons. Thank you so much to Angela Hemming, who has jumped on board Open Cinema in the last 6 months and helped take us to the next level. Thank you so much, Angela Hemming. Indeed. And very much alongside Angela are Mary Lou Wakefield and Carolyn Michaels, who have also, the 3 of them, the 4 of us, have really kind of like worked hard over the last 2 years and had a lot of fun developing this idea, this hybrid cinema idea that has made Open Cinema a leader in Canada in alternative distribution in a cross-platform manner. So thank you so much to those folks. I know, it's been a long season. I'm working it. I would also like to thank Lorena Desiree, who has jumped on board and been a great part of our team, and tonight's tweeters, Tamar Taylor and, thank you, Ilana Turner from Dancing with the Octopus. Thank you so much. Yes, indeed. And a special mention to a few of the folks who were tweeting from somewhere else. Janai Aragon from UVic was tweeting with us, and the Representation Project folks, Imran Sadiqe was tweeting, along with Michelle Goering from the Misrepresentation Project. And I urge you to take a look at their website, the Representation Project, for all kinds of actions and things that you can do to continue helping to create media we like, which is another hashtag that is being used to favor good advertising. And thanks to photographers Stacy White and to Robert Kriegler. Is that right? Did I get your name right? Thank you very much. Richard Kriegler. Also thank you to the MediaNet team. Open Cinema is a program of MediaNet, and Peter Sandmark is the executive director and a big part of making Open Cinema happen every month and helping us with grant writing and strategizing and all kinds of good leadership. Thank you so much, Peter Sandmark. And Kirk Schwartz has been slaving up there again with the sort of hot equipment for months and helping us to innovate in ways that the tools are not really designed to do. So I want to say a big, big thank you to Kirk Schwartz. Thank you so much for all your work. And Ellie Dion has been a great support and a great team member. Thank you very much, Ellie. And Caitlin Lewis is normally here, but she's gone home sick, so a big thank you to Caitlin Lewis. So we are now going to draw the grand prize draw for the night for one night for two at an Accent Inn in BC. Thank you so much to Jan Dong for selling the grand prize draw tickets. All right, so I'm going to pull the ticket and we're going to see who's got their winning number. Is everybody ready? Is there a drum roll? Okay. The winner of an Accent Inn's night in BC at a BC hotel, the last three numbers are 033. Oh, some close winners. Do we have a winner? We have a winner. Nice. Hooray, it's Janice Lacouvé. Thank you, yay. Wonderful. So what you need to do is speak to me before the end of the night and I will give you the certificate. A big round of applause for Janice Lacouvé. All right, so now without further ado, I'm going to introduce Peter Sandmark, who is our moderator for tonight, a consummate musician and showman, and the executive director of MediaNet. Please welcome Peter Sandmark.
Thank you very much, Mandy. Thank you, everyone, for coming. What a great film. So I'm going to ask our speakers to join me up on stage while I get you introduced here. Where are you all? Come on up and grab a seat, and then we'll get these proceedings in. It's so bright. So why don't I start on my left? We have. She's been more than 25 years in the media as a reporter, a columnist, an editor, many roles at the Times columnist, digital editor, and editor-in-chief. She was able to view the role of women in the media and how they're portrayed from different points of view, and that same awareness now continues in her work, where she oversees media relations and public affairs at the University of Victoria. Please welcome Denise Helm. Next to her, she has spent her life devoted to the arts as an actor, festival administrator, theater TV producer and promoter, and now as an activist filmmaker. Her project, Dancing with the Octopus, began 5 years ago as a documentary and has morphed into an 8-tentacled multimedia project. The most recent tentacle, Dancing Backwards, Let's Get Canada's Political Women into History, is currently in pilot stage with grade 5, 8, and 10 students in Victoria. Combating youth voter apathy, providing female role models, and encouraging more girls to become leaders. Please put your hands together and welcome Sandy Maisel. And last but not least, our speaker has been a steadfast presence at Bridges for Women's Society for over 13 years, a grounding feminist leader in the agency, and recently completed a body of work for her master's in social work thesis called Blueprint for Resistance, the Heart of Ethical Practice at Bridges for Women Society. Originally from Saskatchewan, she's the mother of two, an accomplished singer and musician, and will soon be in Nashville, Tennessee, indulging her passion for bluegrass and country music. Please welcome the program director of Bridges for Women, Jenny Holder. Shall we start with you, Jenny? And with no further ado, let's get going. I'm going to ask Denise to start. Take it away.
I'm going to stand because I've been sitting a lot tonight. So thanks to everybody for coming out here on such a warm, beautiful night. Thanks for all the incredible work and volunteers that went into making this event so fabulous. I feel very flattered to be part of this discussion tonight. So I'm here, I suppose, in three roles. I'm here as an individual woman who has lived my life, both in my gender and as an individual, and how that's intersected. I'm here also as a mother of an 11-year-old, which scares the bejesus out of me, being a mother of a young girl in this society. And I'm also here as someone with 25 years of experience in the media, which has been a real privilege to help select the stories and help give voice to women and other people who don't traditionally have a voice in the media. So one of the things that struck me today is, I was actually talking to one of my friends, Diane, prior to this, and she said, you know, I'm here to hear what's different. So, for instance, in media and leadership in media, even though 80% of the intake class at Carleton, which is one of the largest journalism courses in Canada, 80% of those first-year students are female. And yet, across Canada, in the top editorial positions, it's only 1 in 10. So something is happening between when young women come into journalism as a calling and as a vocation, and something happens along the way. And later I can talk to perhaps some of that. So one of the things that has changed, though, is Jill Abramson is the very first executive editor-in-chief at the New York Times since 2010. So isn't that fabulous? Today she got fired. And there's a very interesting article by New Yorker columnist about why she got fired, even though she hasn't said publicly what it is. And he has written about Jill before, who I considered a mentor, and apparently she challenged the fact that she wasn't paid as much as her predecessor, and that the person in her previous role in the newspaper, who was also a man, she was not paid as much as him. So according to this writer, she very politely, through a lawyer, tried to open up that conversation with the publisher of the New York Times. And she now does not have a job, and I think that it's a sad commentary on what's happening in today's media. Because as you heard throughout the documentary, which was excellent, it's people who are in those positions of power who are making the decisions that really influence not only what we see, but how we experience our lives. And the more women that are around those board tables, that are in those newsrooms, choosing the stories, giving voice to people who don't traditionally have a voice, I think the better off we all are. The other thing that really struck me as I was watching the documentary, and it reinforces some of my own fears as a mother of a young girl, is the sexualization and the sexualized violence in today's society, and also how girls are earlier and earlier exposed to images that they start to become and think is normalized. But my challenge is, how do I, without kind of hovering over her, teach her and talk to her about how to think critically about the media? So, you know, we'll listen. I try and read all the books that she reads, and we listen to, Cool FM together, even though I'd rather be listening to the CBC and 91.3, so between modern rock and, earnest radio. And so I say, well, geez, that's an interesting story, song, that's really got a catchy beat, but maybe the words aren't so appropriate. So I'm trying to give her the language and tools. There's a great camp down in Albuquerque. It's a 6-week course. It's called the Girls Toolkit. And so as part of this summer camp, they're given they're taught how to think critically about the media, about advertising, and they deconstruct it all. They're given the skills to consider that and to think differently about it. And then they get to make their own videos, which I think is really cool. So it's not only giving them a way to think about these issues differently, it's empowering them to create. It's empowering them to make images and stories that matter to them. And there's a screening at the end for their families. So it's not just something that's done in isolation, it's something that's done to further that message along. So I think when it comes to what I feel responsibility as a mother and as a journalist and as an individual, there is that real call to action at the end of the documentary. And one of the things I'm going to go away from here asking in our school district is, are there media literacy courses at the middle school level? What are we doing to tell our kids, both male and female, about how to question those images? And I think for me, if you can think of even small things that you can do one step at a time, we were just talking after the film about how overpowering that whole mega machinery of mass media can be. But if we can think and come away with at least one thing, one concrete thing that we can commit to, I think it really does make a whole little pitter-patter of more steps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sandy,
Thank you.
take it away.
I too will stand up. all this conversation about too much sitting. Anyway, Dancing with the Octopus and Dancing Backwards are really active, so we're always moving around. I just want to let you know that this is the 4th time I've seen this film, and I am knocked out every single time. In fact, I had to close my eyes several times because I know where the really gory parts are, and I just don't want to let those images in my head anymore, and I realize that those are the images that our kids are getting and that are constantly in their heads. And anyway, about 5 years ago, I was working at May Street Productions, and we were, in fact, we were a company of women, and we were having a lot of trouble getting the kinds of commissions that the male filmmakers were getting. And we ended up having to do Canada's, next top model the first, year here. And although Hilary Pryor has done a lot of really great documentary work, but I was just getting to the point where so much wasn't right in my life and the bigger life in Canada and the States and everywhere. And I was thinking, why aren't the real essential issues that matter to me being dealt with in a serious way where they can take action? Why isn't this happening? So I decided I would start on a documentary because I'd had so many said that where they've said no to me. Like I was doing one on I was one of the first to want to do one on grandmothers raising grandchildren before, and CBC said, no, I'm sorry, no one's going to want to watch this, and the advertisers won't go for it. I mean, I've got lots of those kinds of stories, and I finally said, forget it, I'm going to do this. And I call it Dancing with the Octopus, and I wanted to know why there aren't enough women in politics. And as a result, I mean, you saw an awful lot of reasons why women feel disempowered, where our lack of confidence comes from. Those were fantastic examples and really blew my socks off. But, when I was a kid, I remember in Hebrew school reading a prayer that said, "Dear God," or "Thank you, God, for not making me a woman." And that's where it started with me when I was about 6 years old. The last time I saw misrepresentation, somebody came up to me afterwards and said, you know what? You have to get the kids when they're young. And just what Jane Fonda said up there was you have to get these kids when you're young. Okay, so that's what we're doing now. First of all, Dancing with the Octopus is a documentary that's 5 years in the making. It's still not done. Thanks to Carolyn Michaels and Angela Hemming, we're getting there. But the other tentacles have different kinds of little media distribution systems. So I thought humor was a way to reach young women. Humor rather than being earnest. And that was something I realized, that nobody was going to listen to a bunch of women whining about why we're not part of the old boys club. We have to hit them with humor because there's so much unbelievable, shocking, funny stuff, which you saw a lot of there. I started doing webisodes that appealed to young women. I found out 3 minutes, young women, yes. They were watched on the internet, they had an impact. Now Dancing Backwards, I realized we're not in the curriculum. How many people here know who the famous 5 are? Good. All right, and you're enlightened women, okay? How many people can even name the famous 5? All of them. Yeah, well, I couldn't 5 years ago. It's only because I've studied it. So I realized we're not in the curriculum. It's not happening for us. We have to put them back in there. We have to get these kids to tell their stories, to have some fun, to learn about politics, and it's the grade 5s to 8s that we're going for. So Dancing Backwards goes into the schools. We get them all excited about politics, about voting, the idea of fairness. They're very fair-minded. This is the age before they hit puberty, where you have to really start getting them to think and bring up reasons. Let them see for what unfairness is about, and they will stand up for it. Anyway, I've probably gone longer than I have. Should I? Have I done it? No? No? Anyway, well, Janet's not here, so we each get a few extra minutes. It was interesting. The students in Dancing Backwards, I'll just finish up by telling you what the regimen is. You'll see that you have postcards on the table, and on those postcards are pictures of some of the work that the students have done over the past year. They create 3-minute presentations about women in history from Canadian politics, including women currently, and it's very exciting. They have discovered a whole new world. They're so excited about their projects. They can't wait. They're jumping out of their pants. They can't wait for us to come to the school. It's an 8-week program. And the other day, we were filming, and the kids did a song. And the part of the lyrics of the song was, "We will beat men! We will beat men!" And I was kind of, Peter and I, my cameraman and I were kind of going, uh-oh, now what are we going to do about this? So I stopped and I said, hey, what do you think about those lyrics? What are they? And they said, we will beat men. And I said, yeah. And they kind of went, oh. And they took a moment and they thought about it and they said, maybe we should change the lyrics. And I said, yeah, that's a great idea. We started brainstorming words that would rhyme with beat. So they said meet. They, meet up with. And then they didn't even care about rhyming, but they changed the lyric. They got it. Because one of the things that we have to do is to get boys to support girls as equals and girls to support boys as equals. That's the main goal. And Dancing Backwards embraces all genders. And so will Dancing with the Octopus and any of, and I really suggest that talking to the boys and girls together and letting them hold hands and stand in partnership is our best bet.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Thank you. And I should say that we're sorry that Janet Rogers couldn't make it tonight because she is, as you know, the poet laureate for Victoria. So and a fantastic spoken word artist. So if you get a chance, you must see her perform. So Janet Rogers, do make a point of it. And now, last but not least, Jenny, take it away.
I'm going to sit. I've been standing a lot of the day, so I'm just really, really blessed to be here this evening with my colleagues and with all of you to have this opportunity to really reflect. And some of what we're reflecting on tonight is really harsh. It lands on the heart in a very real way, and it brings things to home, right to home. And what it gets me thinking about is, as we're going through that process, when we're working with women at Bridges, is very similar. So we're getting sort of the harsh reality, the everyday of what the media brings, how that connects to the perpetuation of violence, and then what we see is victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and many other forms of discrimination and violence that women are experiencing. And so when we're working with them, facing this with them, and witnessing these stories, we have to have that balance between what is the solution and what is the hope and what is the reality. And so tonight I think it just made me really recognize just how difficult that can be. And in our society, we work with the women to really build that hope and deconstruct the myths, all the kinds of myths that we saw today over and over around the hypersexualization, around just so much invalidation of women's intellect and their ability as leaders and as their importance fundamentally as human beings. So that's a little bit of a sidestep. Now I'll talk about something I was going to talk about. There's a few things that were said tonight that really hit home in the movie for me, and one was that women are natural enemies, that this is such a huge myth that we see. And we see this in the women that we serve when they come in for help, for counseling, for retraining and focus in their life to get back on track after they've gone through so much violence and abuse. And they're afraid. They're afraid of men, yes, because many times the violence has been at the hands of men. But they're also afraid of women. They're afraid of connecting. They're afraid to open up and to really do their healing because they've had women as enemies, putting them down and holding them kind of in the abusive relationship. Sometimes they're turned against. People say, why are you staying there? It should be, you should know enough to just leave. You let that happen to you. If you were dressed that way, if you were drinking, then it was your fault you were sexually abused. And women are perpetuating these things against each other and holding that patriarchy in place. And so at Bridges, we see that we provide a space where that can actually change, where we intentionally work together with the women to change that kind of hatred and lateral violence that keeps patriarchy and that keeps domestic violence, sexualized violence alive in our communities. So I think that's my piece for right now. I guess the other piece that I always have to do, because, I've been working at Bridges for a long time on a shoestring, and we need money. We always need donations. And if you're thinking about this, feeding capitalism, feeding all the things we do, where we spend money and we don't think about what we're spending the money on. I'd really encourage everybody in this room to think about if they have extra donations to give, if they've got something that they want to focus on for the year, to consider our agency, Bridges for Women, because we are part of the solution and we're working very actively in our community.
Thank you very much, Jenny. So what we do at Open Cinema is encourage dialogue with the audience. It is a chance to talk about the issues the film has raised, to ask questions from our panelists. So we do have a wireless mic, and we have one of our volunteers, Robert, who's going to be moving around through the audience. So if anyone has a question, either for specifically for one of our guests, or about the film that and we can fight it out who's going to answer that. So we have a question right away. Yes. And
Denise, is this working?
Yes.
Denise, I was wondering, how can a women's group that wants to get publicity for the good work they do, how can they get into mainstream media? Now, with the Times Colonist, there are various places, the bulletin board, and I forget what some of the others are, that you can put an announcement about an event or a meeting or whatever. And what we've found is that maybe twice a year it'll be mentioned about our group, but we have monthly meetings. We follow all the rules in terms of the number of words you can do, and it doesn't show up. So what would you suggest as a way of making that happen?
So without knowing specifically about your group, I'd say the advice I give to anyone who's trying to bring attention to an issue is think, what is it about that story that would appeal to people beyond the people you already talked to? So you want to look at what is it about your organizations that has impact, relevance? How does it appeal to people, how they live their lives? And then you have to find someone who's willing to share their story about that. And I think the more that people can use that voice to be able to explain and get those connections, I think that's probably the best thing to do. You have to understand that there's dozens and dozens of people looking for attention in very small and shrinking news holes. So if you can get a story once a year, I'd say you're doing good. But I understand what you're saying about going beyond announcement. And I can talk to you later one-on-one, find out more about your situation, give you some more specific advice.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Now also we have the power bar, and we may take questions from the social media, so if there's something, just wave and get my attention. Yes, we have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is sort of a question and also a bit of a comment. I saw this film about 2 months ago, and just to put it into context, I was sitting on a bus, and I'm 37 years old, and there were a group of 16-year-old boys sitting at the back of the bus behind me, and I was listening to what they were saying, and their comments to each other were really disturbing, and they were talking about young girls. And I thought, oh my God, like, this is actually, it's happening right now. It's happening right now. And these young boys are saying these horrible things about women, and I'm 37, and I'm thinking, don't they know that this is so wrong? Don't they understand? Like, don't they know that, I thought this was history, you know? But it's not, it's happening right now. So my question to each of you is, because we've been talking a lot about women and how we know how to help our daughters. We're women and we can help our daughters. We can do that, right? We can show them the way. But how do we break the cycle with our sons as women? You know, and I just wanted to sort of touch base on that, on the young man's perspective on all of this, and do you have any thoughts on that?
Sandy? Jenny?
Go ahead. Do you have something? I have 2 daughters, not a son. but I have many friends with young boys, and I see them really struggling with this issue around raising their boys, how to not put too much on their shoulders. And I think we heard that in the video tonight, or in the movie tonight, just about that we can't just rely on the boys for the change that's coming up. We have to also look to the generation that's right now. What I see is there is a huge need for a similar movement for men in our communities. You know, and I think there's some really good examples that are in the community now, and I'm struggling for the name, but the Aboriginal Men's Movement. Victoria? Yeah, the Moose Hide Campaign. I would encourage people to look that up. I know that there's some really innovative things going on with that.
Yeah. Sorry, what's it called?
The Moose Hide Campaign.
Moose Hide.
Yeah. I get this question a lot. Last week I was doing training up in Port Hardy, and people are always asking me, what's out there for men? What can we do to help to support boys? How can we do this? And I'm hearing it in every venue that I'm at. I don't have the answer, but what I do know is that we have to pay attention. We have to work collectively. It's for so long we've had to work separately, in the sense that we've had to sort of fight for legitimacy for women's rights and equality and services, because it's so challenging to keep even those alive. And I think it's this conception that if we work together and if we focus on, you know, assisting each other, and then we're going to somehow erase the need for women's services. And it's very complex issue. Those are my thoughts at this moment. Hopefully it's helpful.
I just think about Senator Nancy Ruth. As part of my documentary, I've been to Ottawa several times and interviewed women from all parties. This is my whole project is nonpartisan, and I actually think that partisanship is part of the problem. This whole power, patriarchy, partisanship, this letter P is kind of scary. Anyway, Senator Nancy Ruth said that whenever we hear any kind of discrimination or put downs of, you know, women, racism, whatever, if we don't stand up and say something, we're doing a huge disservice to ourselves, our mothers, our aunties, our sisters, our cousins, our brothers, our sons. And it's kind of true. And even though I'm not saying that one woman should stand up when there's a whole group of men standing there and, you know, try to, but I mean, I think appealing to sort of a more compassionate and human, trying to humanize everybody, as they were saying, one of the things that is allowing for this kind of violence is the dehumanization of women. The fact is that we're objects, the objectification. And so I think we all have, and likely anybody who's here probably has done a very good job with their own sons, and encouraging their own sons to do the same, as well as their daughters, and let them know that that kind of humor, if it hurts, if anybody's getting hurt, it's not okay. If it hurts, it's not okay. There's a huge movement called 1 Billion Rising. I don't know if you know about it, but every February 14th, people all over the world stand up and dance against violence. They take to the streets and they dance against violence. It's something that, you know, I don't understand. We're 52% of the population. Why don't we just say enough? Like, what is it? What is it that we're so afraid of that we can't just stand there, link arms with all of those who believe that we're all humans and we won't put up with being hurt or hurting each other, and say enough? That's it. I'm sorry. You want to have sex? You have to stop behaving that way. You want to, we control the money in our families. Like, there are ways for us to do it. I don't understand why we're not out on the streets. If we were in France and some of the things were going down that are going down in our government, we'd be out on the streets all the time. We wouldn't be working. So let's look to each other, and that's not just women, but to men, lots and lots and lots of people of all genders. I was here last time. Let's not hurt anyone, and let's not get hurt.
Thank you, Sandy. Any other questions? I did have a comment. Oh, sorry.
Well, I'm
Denise.
just I'm there on the bus with you, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, and I think I would choose to do something now than I would have before as a mother, because I think as a adult woman, I can just, zone that out. But I feel a different sense of responsibility now. And you know what? I would find it intimidating. And then I would be angry at myself for feeling intimidated about going up and saying something. So I think I would need practice. I think I would have to start by, when I saw something that wasn't maybe 2 or 3 guys at that age who are all pumped up on testosterone, as much as I would like to think I would go up there and deliver this eloquent message that they're going to remember, I think I need to practice first. So I think what you have to do, well, for me, not you, but is think, what's a situation where I can start speaking out in a more public way when I encounter those kind of situations? And then I'll get maybe a little bit braver. And then I'll be able to, do something when it's something that I might not, that's outside my comfort zone. I'm great with all sorts of stuff outside my comfort zone until I meet that next thing that's outside my comfort zone.
I think you can still really send messages to people, even in subtle ways, without being, forcing
It doesn't have to
yourself
be
onto people. You
confrontational,
can
no.
still send messages to people.
That's right.
And you can get to the heart of it, right? Really fast.
And it's,
think about that.
And it's not a matter of in even engaging, but as you say, to just say, that's not appropriate, right? Yeah. And I think there'd be a lot of people on those bus. I mean, if it was a movie, they would stand up and applaud, and maybe they wouldn't stand up and applaud, but there'd be a lot of people on those buses, on that bus, who would be going, yeah, right on, right on.
I do feel that the always to go to love, right? Like, instead of, to try to appeal to these kids is like, guys, I'm a human being. Maybe if I had said that to them, you know what? You're talking about human beings. And then just walk out of the bus, and remind them of their heart, of wait a minute now. Yeah, we are talking about human beings here. Maybe not all of them feel that way, but one of them will,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I just want to say that this whole issue is so complicated, like everything is so complicated, why there aren't more women in politics, how we're being treated, how everything's going on. And like you say, we just have to deconstruct it and do anything that we can in a single moment. And yeah.
Thank you. We have a question up front here. There we go. Thank you.
I actually did. Hello?
Okay, let's try it, test it. It should be on.
I actually didn't have a question. I had a comment that I don't think we as women have to take this all on either. I think it's time for men to step up.
Good comment. Jenny.
And I think that we need to invite men to step up in a kind, compassionate, and connected way, in a way that we're not shaming and blaming and creating more animosity, because it just isn't going to it's not getting us anywhere. We've had so many years of the experience of that, and coming together, in our families to talk to, our uncles, our kids, our fathers about these issues, bringing it up rather than having it never spoken, only with women, So I think we all have a part to play to bring it to the table and help each other to have these conversations and to really support men in this kind of leadership. Support them with their voices and what they need to do to come forward with these alternative values,
That's a good point. Question in the back. I'm just going to mention here, if people are bid on something in the silent auction, that the list of silent auction winners is now at the bar. So I think you can see if you won the piece you got, and you can pay any time at the back of the room. So yes, go ahead.
Hi.
Thank you.
My question is, with all the the mass sexualization in the media, how do we empower women and everybody sexually without it becoming a question, without it becoming sexualization?
There's no easy question. No easy question.
If we had the answer, I don't know, I'd run for president. I don't know. You got the answer. Go for it.
Go ahead.
So the question is, how do we help empower people in their sexuality without over-sexualizing and hyper-sexualizing people? It is difficult. I think it's, in order to, I think focusing on people's consent, focusing on people's individuality, in terms of what their expression is, but not pushing them into what we think they should be, right? So in kind of a one-to-one relationship, allowing that person to have the freedom to express themselves the way they want to be seen, or how they want to be in the world, how they want to be sexually. Does that help at all? Yeah?
We have a question here. And go ahead. Bring up the microphone.
I think that I have more of a comment than a question.
Just hold it this far away, that's all.
This may be a comment, but I'll try to frame it as a question as well. It's my observation that at the same time there was a rise in this hypersexualization of this objectification of women, there was also simultaneously this dumbing down of boys that was going on. At the same time, I was raising 2 girls from 1987, 89 until now, and they're in their 20s, and meeting lots of their friends, and they were well educated, but yet not tackling the complex issues. They didn't seem to be getting to a place where they could tackle these complex issues. And I thought it was because of the influence of television and everything, the media, of what was going on. So, I mean, I think a disservice has been done to boys at the same time there has been a disservice done to girls.
So that there's a sort of a dumbing down of boys, anti-intellectual, almost propaganda. Anyone want to speak to that?
I suppose only in that I agree that, especially with what's happened with media and the immediacy and the high stimulus and the speed, that people are given less and less room to explore and be creative, and I think a lot more things are pushed onto us, and I think that part of that is starving the type of creative discourse and the intellectual breathing room that we have.
And I guess the lack of investigative journalism and just taking like the 3-minute attention span or the 20-second attention span, where they just get sort of a sound bite and they don't get a chance to really figure out how to think something through. And that kind of taking time, going back to that concept of taking time, maybe that is a part of the key.
I think it's really prudent what you've said in terms of you can't have one without the other. So as we're brainwashing and instilling these kinds of values and roles about women, we're also doing it with men, and we're providing a very strict way to be. And so each side, reinforces the other, and you can't have one without the other. There's no objectification without somebody who's going to objectify and learn that that's the way that they need to behave, or that that's normal. And both sides have to be dealt with and looked at and really taken seriously.
I'm going to throw out a question here as well, though. The film makes me think about legislative issues. It brings up the fact that there's been a lack of legislative progress in the States on these issues, but also maybe versus or compared to educational approach. In other words, is it education we need to offer different role models, or even a consumer revolt approach, like where you say, well, we're not going to buy the hashtag that Mandy referred to, like, we don't support this. What are your thoughts on is it, and this could even relate to the difference between Canada and the U.S. too. What's the route we should be taking? Is there legislation that we should be pushing for that's going to change can we legislate the media? Is that going to work, or is it a campaign? I know this it's an easy question.
All right, well, I don't know if we can legislate the media, but I certainly think there are ways of getting a better balance, which will give us better decision-making and better policy-making in this country. And I think that what's got to happen is that women have to step up all at once. Like, I'm sorry, we don't feel comfortable being the only woman in the room of men. And we need to encourage girls and women to participate in politics and change this culture, change this patriarchy. We have to be 50-50. Like, that's what's going to make the change. And then there's going to be sort of different perspectives on decision making. And I'm sorry, there will be all of a sudden you hear about the foreign workers, right? There's just this example this week, or a couple weeks ago, the foreign workers problem. Well, didn't Jason Kenney come out the next day and say, okay, restaurant people, no foreign workers? Well, they took action, didn't they? Okay. Violence against whatever, even something as simple as daycare, there is no will there to make the changes that all of us know need to be made. And I think if there were 50% women there, that would break the patriarchal culture, that would get our voices there and get a lot of these concerns that have to do with actually humanity and socialization and taking care of each other past as important, having our voices heard. So as far as legislation, I'm throwing out couple of ideas here. One is maybe we need a quota system for 2 election cycles. I'm not saying we should, I'm just saying it's worth talking about. Kim Campbell had a wonderful solution. She said, let's throw down the gauntlet, have 1 man and 1 woman in each riding. Come on, let's just do it. Rwanda had all of its men killed in genocide, so when they started up their parliament, they had 50% women right off the bat. They had the quota there, and because they needed the women, they didn't have the men. I mean, there are ways and ways. At Carleton University, you said there's a woman named Claire Becton who's running a course called Women in Politics and Leadership in Politics at Carleton, and she has done a lot of research at the UN and in Chile when Michelle Bachelet was the president. And she said that she asked the women in the cabinets, what was the difference when there was a woman leader there? And she said, our issues were taken care of. Our voices were heard. We got taken care of. We had 6 female premiers a couple of months ago. We've got, 2 now? 2 are left. And part of the problem is women say, well, yeah, we had 6 women premiers. Why didn't things change? Well, it's because of the system. A single individual woman can't change it. It's a patriarchal structure. She hasn't got any power to change it. Oh, I'm ranting, sorry.
Well, I like this solution because when we have 50-50 lawmakers, then we won't have to legislate like good media practices because it'll just be happening from that highest level. But I think it also comes back to leadership in media organizations, whether it's the people owning the media organizations or in those decision-making roles. So I think rather than legislating, I would like to see it happening in a more integrated, organic way.
Very good. Some questions over here?
No,
Janice. Or comments?
Not a question, a comment. For the person who was on the bus and didn't know hey, how are you? There's a whole group of mostly young women and some young men. I think they may be associated with the Sexual Assault Center, but it's called the Hollaback Movement for Street Harassment and Harassment in Public Places. And Victoria has a chapter, so victoria.hollaback, HOLLABACK.org, Hollaback. They have a Facebook page and they organize events, exactly what you're talking about, where you can role play and figure out, okay, what would I do in a situation like that and how can I engage so that this behavior isn't perpetuated.
Hollerback.ca. Holla, HOLLABACK.ca. Org, sorry, .org. Hollaback.org. There we go. A comment or question?
Yes, it's a comment. I may be stating the obvious, but I think we're still operating within a male patriarchal paradigm. And because we accept that, we don't stand up to it. Because when we say we mean women. And I think that it may take a generation for that to pass on, but there is still this lack of direction. Why would men change when they are holding all the power? It's the testosterone. They decide who goes to war and why we should go to war. They don't include daycare. We work 9 to 5 because they determined what the hours would be and how offices will function and how the entire operation works. And what I noticed about this movie is mostly American, it's Western thinking. The alternative for women in the East is they put on a chador and say, no man will look at my body, that's the way it is. And I'm not saying that's a good thing either, but it is their response to, you go to other countries, Muslim countries, you will not see naked women on their billboards like they do here. And they point that out and say, this is what you do with your women in the West. We don't want to be treated that way. And I think there are alternatives, but it's not, because obviously in their countries, they come from traditional tribal situations where men are out there fighting each other and women are bearing children. But I think there are two opposing ways of dealing with the problem right there. And the problem, as far as I can see, is that men have always had that power, and we are still dealing with that paradigm, which we are educated as girls to be pleasing to men in that way, because men are visual, and that's what they want, and that's what they want to see. And so we are brought up to give them what they want to see, and particularly when we have low self-esteem and we don't know how else to find acceptance and love, is that we do those things to please men, because that way we will be found attractive and found to be okay. And it's going to take more than just holding hands and saying, you know, let's do this and that. I think we have to penetrate that male power system in order to change the paradigm altogether before it's a totally equal situation. And I'm sorry, I don't know how to do that, but that's where I'm looking at it.
Thank you very much for your comment. I don't know if you have any response or add something to that.
Well, I just know that the UN has stated that if there's, I mean, they say 33%, I don't agree, I think it's 50%, that, that once you get that kind of percentage, you have a change in the culture. And so getting our numbers up is what's going to help change that patriarchal culture.
You have another comment or question?
I really think, you guys, and ladies, like I feel like I'm the forward movement of like a new generation of women. And it's really amazing because I feel love and compassion. I walk down the street now and I look women in the eye and we feel love for each other and we smile at each other. I think that's already happening. I think that movement is already happening. I think that where we really need to focus our efforts now, in my estimation, is on figuring out how to build a healthy relationship between women and men. That's basically the long and the short of it in my mind. And I think that the way that we can do that is to have compassion for men, because we have to understand, like, their messages are just as mixed up as ours are. But we are women. We communicate with each other. We're very good at it. We have compassion. We raise babies. We give birth. You know, we are the nurturers. It's in our very makeup, you know? So I think that bridging the gap now, I feel like maybe I'm just a little ahead of where we're going, but I really feel like, for me, like, I feel so much love for so many women. I think what we now need to do is to help men, to help men get in touch with their more feminine selves, and try to figure out how to help them, and not be angry at them, but instead try to figure out how to help them in a loving way, get closer to maybe where we all are, if that makes any sense. I don't know. You know?
It could be. Are you putting your hand up because you have a comment or a question from Twitter?
I just want to acknowledge that the Representation Project has a new film coming out that is related to boys and supporting boys and men. And I'm dropping the name off of my radar right now, but we've been tweeting about it all night. And then to segue into their question, if it's possible, is I was talking to Lynn in the audience, who is, sorry, I was distracting. Basically, the question that I wanted to ask is related to how things have changed over the past few decades. I'm 30, and lots of the people in this room are older than me, so my mother asked me, why are you still having this conversation? Like, I know the landscape of media has changed and that there's a lot more of it out there, but is there anything that wasn't happening a few decades ago that is now, or that was happening then and isn't now? Basically, just can we comment on time?
So you're saying why are we having this conversation again? Still, why are we still having to have this conversation? Damn it! Why isn't the patriarchy gone yet? Okay. No, sorry, I said that. I'm sorry.
Could be about the money. Could be about money and control. But, you know, there were an awful lot of second wave feminists who, you know, chained themselves to fence posts in the 90s and marched and everything. And you know what? They finally said, I'm not getting anywhere, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life doing this because it's like batting my head against a brick wall, and they quit. And so we have to kind of, every time there's steps forward, there's also steps backwards. I don't really know where we are now at this point. I mean, I see lots of newspaper articles all the time, and I start to believe that we're really making headway. And then I see other articles that take me back, and I just don't know where we are anymore. So all I think is what I've decided to do is just try and make a difference as best I can. And I think that each one of us, if you figure out what, you know, excites you and how you can best communicate some of that opening and some of that love or some of that whatever, you know, invitation to have dialogue with humor or with film or with whatever, and with young people, because I think that is the key.
So I'm going to say something kind of funny, even to myself. I'm not one to side with the Christian right, usually, but I will give them one token, which is that I think that we are experiencing collectively in Western culture a very strong loss of values, and however way you want to look at that. But to me, what I see a huge need is to really reflect personally in our families, in our communities, whatever kind of communities we're attached to, about what kind of values we are living out and what kind of values we can collectively start to support each other in, because being intentional about what we want and how we want things to change, what we want it to look like, being the change we want to see in the world, which I think was one of the last things in the film tonight, is where we have empowerment. It's where we can start today. It's where we can make the change. And knowing what our values are, knowing what we value and what we stand for, and how to communicate that with others is a very powerful tool. So I just wanted to add that to tonight.
I think the environment might take care of it for us, too.
I think the reason we're still having this conversation is the same reason that Jill Abramson got fired today, in that a lot of those old structures are perpetuating. And I really liked what you had to say about the values, and it's also acting on those values. So for instance, I picked up the front page today of 4 different newspapers because I often look to see how women are portrayed in the media. And so here's what we had as sampling. It wasn't as good as I was hoping it would be in terms of the disparity, but so here's the local Times Colonist, and I thought, what a powerful photo that is. That is a picture of a young woman, a teenager at a local school, an all-girls school, dressed in red to show their support for the girls who've been abducted in Nigeria. So there is a very powerful message to other young women about what you can do to bring change in your community. So a small thing you could do is to write to the editors and say, geez, it was really great to see that image on the front page of the Times Colonist. Front page of the National Post, how is women portrayed? Jackie Kennedy. So, and this is about her fears of her husband's flirtations. Very different newspaper, very different message about women. Write a letter to the editor. Here's the Globe and Mail. A story about the arrest to do with the tanker rail disaster back in Quebec. And But what I did like about the Globe and Mail, sometimes I go through the business sections because I want to see how women are portrayed, because the Globe and Mail, generally their front page stories are about people in political power or people in economic power. So I went to the business section thinking, okay, I'm going to look for a good example. So first of all, the woman in the banner is Say Yes to the Dress. So there was a couple of, all the media covered this. It's to do with a bridal salon that's opened in Toronto, a big name. There's a TV show called Say Yes to the Dress, so they're there now. So I'm just thinking, okay, that's pretty pathetic. So then once again, I go inside, you know, looking for, so okay, here's a very large picture of a man. Okay, more stories about money. And then they blew it for me, because then they had two stories side by side. It's rare to see this in business pages. Here's a story about a female plumber who's decided to start her own business. Now, granted, it's because of the lack of respect and work she had in her trade, but what she has done is she has now formed her all-female plumbing company. She's rocking it. Over here, another picture of a woman, a very successful entrepreneur who's battling a knockoff product of hers in China. So even though these are two different stories about women, this could be just a male entrepreneur. To be able to, for women to be able to see other businesswomen represented in these pages, I thought was very powerful. Okay, fourth newspaper was the Vancouver Sun. I won't try and fold that up. Vancouver Sun had a front page about the disaster in Turkey. So once again, just a very human interest story. But up in the banner, it's a fashion story, and the other one is a crime story. So just be aware of that. See, when you see photos and representation of women in the media that you agree with and you support, give them that positive reinforcement, just as you might if you see photos that you think are objectifying women.
Thank you. And we got time for a few more questions. So one over here, and then we'll get the mic over to you, ma'am. Go ahead.
Hi. I'm a big alpha male, and I'm full of testosterone, and I have been all my life. And there's not much I can do about it. Now, I guess what I wanted to say is I'm going back a couple of 100,000 years. And that's where I come from. We've got this little interlude of civilization that seems to be more like a prison system worldwide. I guess what I want to say is if and when this kind of system we have now breaks down and there's something like in the Balkans or in Rwanda, you get the big alpha males and the big beta males, and the lower ones go out and start chopping and killing and whatever. And to us, we're kind of like animals. Now, I'm just talking for myself, and we're not all like, not all males are kind of like me or people like me, but we, I don't know how to say this, but it's like we're like animals. We can be civilized, we get the right woman, like an alpha woman. I was passing a bus stop, and there was this thing advertising these red blazers for women to go to this college, and it says, find out where the red blazer can take you. And I thought, what's this? And I guess there's private colleges where women become trophy wives or whatever to you know, that's, and probably that's where women have a lot of control over males, that dominant males. So as far as women progressing, I see that as one way. And then the other way, of course, is just to fight the other way, like just doing what you're doing it's great, actually. And with the two methods together, it's kind of like the tide. You get a peak thing with Gloria Steinem, and then it kind of like backs off a bit, and everyone thinks, oh God, you know, the women's movement has gone back. But it's kind of like the tide coming in. So anyway, it's kind of rambled kind of comment. I guess I don't really have a question, but thanks for listening.
Thank you for your comment. Thanks very much. We have another comment over here, please.
I'm not sure if I can master the microphone. You got it. But I'm going to try. Sandy, that comment you made about second wave feminists that gave up. Well, we didn't just give up. A lot of us started having children. And I think that there's a generation of children coming up that were raised by some parents, fathers and mothers that had some consciousness about gender roles, had some conscious, and it continues now. I mean, the future is, in my mind, looks so much brighter. I think we've reached an age where women can be heard almost as equally as men. Almost, we're not quite there. We don't get the floor for quite as long usually, but our voice is being heard, and women are learning to speak, and men are learning to listen. So I think there is hope, and I think things are changing. That's my comment, not a question.
Thank you. Well, I guess we're pretty much wrapping up. So I don't know if you have any closing thoughts you'd like to leave us with, or Jenny, take it. Yes.
I would just encourage people to continue paying attention to what the messages in their bodies tell them when they see these images or when they're hearing things. And because when we're listening to ourselves and our intuition, we're going to be able to be in a better place to take action. So the more connected we are to what's going on around us, the better equipped we are to take action and know what it is that we need to do. And there's many, many different things we need to do, but if we're not paying attention, then we can't take action. So I think that would just be something that I would leave us with to think about.
That's great. And I just want to let you know that Dancing with the Octopus has a blog, and if anybody has some ideas or would like to write something on this topic or any other that has to do with women in politics or equality or anything that you'd like, please get in touch with me. My number's on the postcard, or you can go to dancingwiththeoctopus.com. And thank you so much to everybody who put this on and who are paying attention to these issues.
I just want to say how much I'm really enjoying all the shared wisdom from everybody here, men and women, and I'm going away a lot richer from the experience, so thanks to everybody.
Let's have a hand for our guests tonight. And you can't go away yet because we have, thanks to our sponsor, Global Village, gifts for each of you. So you can randomly choose one, and we're not sure what you're getting, but they're always good from Global Village. So let's have a hand. Once again, thank you very much. And I'll pass it over to Mandy to, let's have a hand for our guest speakers. And thank you to all for your comments. Mandy.
Thank you very much. A big round of applause for Peter Sandmark and his fabulous moderating skills. Thank you. And thank you to Denise and Sandy and Jenny. And thanks to you all. A very stimulating discussion, a great way to end our season. And we encourage you to follow the links and sort of further to actions and continue to take this conversation to your families and your workplaces and into the streets.